Hello, everyone. This is Warhawk Beyond 2040, bringing to you another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. And today marks a very important moment in WWE history. It was on this very day, on January 20th, 2003, 20 years ago, that Ric Flair, Triple H, Batista, and Randy Orton came together to form the most dominant and successful faction not only in the Ruthless Aggression era, but in WWE history, Evolution. So, Evolution was comprised, as I mentioned, of Triple H, Ric Flair, Randy Orton, and Batista, and this was a showcase of past, present, and future of professional wrestling. So you had Ric Flair representing the past, Triple H representing the present, Randy Orton representing the future, and Batista was the muscle enforcer for the group. And in my honest opinion, I thought Evolution was a fantastic faction, all great heels, masters at drawing heat, a lot of that due to Triple H and Ric Flair. And it was the perfect platform in helping to create two future main eventers in Randy Orton and Batista, who both would go on to become very successful as single stars. It not only rejuvenated Ric Flair's career as the mentor slash manager of the group, and it also cemented Triple H's position as the top heel of the Raw brand. And also, Evolution has had its share of criticism. This was during the infamous Reign of Terror by Triple H, where he hogged the world title scene for years and years. And aside from all of that, there's no denying the success that Evolution achieved in their long run. And in a way, you could kind of look at Evolution as a 21st century modern Four Horsemen. And a lot of that is no surprise due to the fact that Ric Flair was part of the Four Horsemen, and Triple H being a huge fan of the Four Horsemen and a huge mark for Ric Flair. So it's understandable to see similarities between the groups. But I looked at Evolution as kind of like the Four Horsemen, but just different, kind of like a more modern take on the Four Horsemen. Obviously, the Four Horsemen are so legendary, and they lasted well over 10 plus years or more. But with Evolution, what they did was they took inspiration from the Four Horsemen, but just applied it for modern times. So they had the best clothes, they had the fast cars, they had all the championship gold, had all the women, all the money, travelled in limos, you name it, Evolution had it all. And I remember being a huge fan of Evolution. I've still got the Evolution shirt, paid, laid and made. And although I was a huge fan of SmackDown during the Ruthless Aggression era, I did love Evolution. I wasn't a great fan of the Reign of Terror of Triple H because he just kept hogging the world title. But I just thought Evolution were really cool. The way they carried themselves, the confidence they exuded each and every single week. The beatdowns, always getting the last word, and the theme song by Motorhead just absolutely rocked. Big fan of Motorhead anyway, but put it with Evolution, it just was perfect. And I still say to this day, out of all of the factions, from DX to the NWO to the Nation, to name a few, I would probably say that Evolution has got probably the greatest entrance theme of all time. Maybe people might not agree with that, but I think Evolution have got the best entrance theme for any group. I wouldn't say they've got the greatest entrance as a group. I would probably still give the nod maybe to other groups like The Brood, but in terms of just pure music on its own, Evolution wins hands down. So Evolution got its start in September 2002 when Ric Flair turned heel and helped Triple H retain the world title and struck Rob Van Dam with a sledgehammer, and these two formed a partnership. And I remember me and my friend, and we talked about this with a lot of other friends, but we all said to each other that, it looks like we might be seeing a new group forming on Raw. We was all debating about who could join, and I remember just about a couple months after Ric Flair and Triple H hooked up, because those two together was a big deal. Ric Flair as the manager of Triple H and mentoring him, it just worked. And I would say, in a way, I know some people said that, oh, Ric Flair was just Triple H's cheerleader. That's the point, because he's the manager, he's the mentor, so that's his job. And I thought Ric Flair did an excellent job. And I remember when Batista was added to the group, when Ric Flair approached him, then me and my friends were like, oh boy, this is getting serious now. This faction in the making is just getting serious now. They got Batista. And I remember Batista at the time, he was just coming out of his Deacon gimmick with Devon Dudley. He just left SmackDown and jumped to Raw. And I remember Ric Flair coming out with Batista. I thought, holy cow. So Ric Flair's representing Triple H, and now he's representing this monster in Batista. I thought, wow, this is getting serious now. So we got Ric Flair, Triple H, and Batista together. Although they didn't really come out on TV that much, because they were kept separate, but just the fact they were together already was a huge deal. And of course, Randy Orton would join on Raw just about a couple months after, the night after the Royal Rumble, and that officially is when Evolution was born. And that was it, really. Randy Orton was the perfect ingredients for the group. He was young, he was cocky, he was arrogant, and he could back his words up in the ring. He was very talented, very athletic, and you could see that he was the future of WWE. There was no question about it. And that was how Evolution started, really. And they would officially give themselves the name just a couple of weeks after their debut, when they put a bloody beatdown on Scott Steiner. And from there, Evolution was off to the races. Aside from a couple of injuries that Orton and Batista sustained at a house show, they were dominant. There was nothing stopping Evolution. Batista returned, taking out Goldberg. Randy Orton returning in that ski mask. So many great moments. And obviously winning all the gold at Armageddon. Triple H as the world champion, Ric Flair and Batista as the tag team champions, Randy Orton as the Intercontinental champion, and he went on to have like a 7-month title reign, defeating guys like Mick Foley, Shelton Benjamin. He even got the win over the Rock and Sock Connection at WrestleMania 20. There was no stopping Evolution. But Evolution wasn't just about being a dominant faction and just running roughshod. It was the perfect platform to create two future stars in Batista and Orton. Randy Orton would win the world title. He would get kicked out of the group, which to me is still probably in the top 3 greatest and most shocking portrayals of all time in wrestling. And Batista would win the Royal Rumble, and he would go on to defeat Triple H at WrestleMania 21. And before you knew it, Ric Flair, Randy Orton, Batista, and Triple H all were successful, and Orton and Batista would go on to be even more successful as big names in the Ruthless Aggression era and onwards. And I would say, for me, 20 years later, Evolution, for me, is probably the most successful faction of all time. And the cool thing I like about Evolution, I'm a huge fan of DX, don't get me wrong, but what I like about Evolution just a little bit more, they never overdone it with the reunions. They had a couple of reunions, but I think they might have had about 3 reunions, one in 2007, one in 2014 when they reunited to take on the Shield in 2 fantastic back-to-back pay-per-view matches. And they had one on the SmackDown 1000 in 2018. So, 3 reunions ain't bad, but there's been like big gaps, not like DX, where every single time DX get together. But Evolution have never overdone it with the reunions, so I'm pleased about that. But it's just hard to believe that, it's been 20 years since Evolution was formed, and everyone has gone on to do very well. Batista's now a major movie star in Hollywood. Triple H is essentially running the company now. You know, his wrestling days are pretty much over. He was forced to retire. Randy Orton is the only one still actively competing in WWE. He's gone on to become a huge star, and you know, obviously he's currently injured at the moment, but he's still very much a part of WWE. And Ric Flair, you know, at the same time, I love Ric Flair, but it's just kind of sad to see what he's become now. But I won't deny the part he played in Evolution. He played such a big role in the success of Evolution. I do believe that Evolution would have been successful regardless, but I think having a guy like Ric Flair, who's one of the biggest true legends in wrestling, just made them a bit more legit and added a bit more credibility to their reputation. You know, he definitely gave them their credibility, and he just really knew how to make everyone look good. You know, he always put Triple H over, he put Batista over, and he always put Randy Orton over. He knew how to make everyone around him not only feel good, but look good as well. So he was tremendous. Triple H was great as the evil leader, you know, with always long promos and the heat he would draw. Randy Orton was excellent as the cocky heel, you know, just annoying the hell out of audiences every week and shoving his accomplishments down their throats. And Batista, he was just perfect as that silent animal who would just come in and just destroy everyone and didn't say a word. That's what I liked about those days with Batista. He didn't speak. His actions spoke louder than words. I could sit here all day and say how great Evolution were, but man, what a faction. And I don't think we're ever going to see another faction like Evolution. Probably not in this lifetime anyway. It was just the perfect balance of past, present, and future coming together and being extremely successful. So 20 years later, Evolution, as I said, for me, still the greatest and most successful faction of all time. Yes, the NWO were a big part of the big boom period during the Monday Night Wars, same with DX, but when we're talking about overall success in all the things I just mentioned, Evolution are right there at the top, and definitely in my top probably three favorite or four favorite factions of all time. So there you have it, guys. 20 years of Evolution. So I'm going to wrap this up now. What's your thoughts on Evolution? Where would you rank them in wrestling history with the factions? Would you put them as the greatest of all time? What was your favourite Evolution moment? Which member do you think benefited the most out of Evolution? Do you think it was Triple H? Do you think it was Ric Flair? Do you think it was Batista? Or do you think it was Randy Orton? And who was your favourite Evolution member? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.